Oh, hi.
Hello, Facebook and everyone else watching this later on after we re-upload the video. Welcome to the Living NLP podcast. My name is Nicholas Rave.
And I am Morgan Lane Bennett.
And we are here, as usual, to talk about living NLP. We were going to do it back on Friday, but this dude, the other dude,
so
the one
sick.
I'm pointing at.
Oh my God, I was so sick. We didn't even talk about
so
that.
Sick.
Dude, I had such a fever. Thank God. It was like people get hit with this flu thing and they get with a cough or a congestion and whatever. I just got a fever for like 48 hours.
Shit.
And you're just like, everything sucks. I was cold and hot. Like, it's crazy how you can be freezing and sweating balls at the same time. Like,
yeah, and achy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the achy lasted a whole other day. So I was fever broke. Yesterday was my ache day where it's like your whole body was like my whole body was like sore as if it had been convulsing for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, I don't have a fever, but what happened to my body? And so I've been just kind of, and I must say I was just very patient and accepting of what my body was going through. Like I wasn't going fucking stupid fever. God, fucking, like I was just okay. This is like, get into it. And I got into it and got out of it fairly quickly. So
it's a good frame to think about taking care of your own body as if you were taking care of another person or a child. Or I like to think of a prize racehorse. Like if your prize racehorse
I think
has
of myself all
a
the time.
fever, exactly, right? If your prize racehorse has a fever, you're not pissed off at it. You're like, oh my God, how can I take care of you? What do you need? Like, I'm going to help you.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was. I was kind to myself and not like stupid, man, had to eat a bunch of work, but let that go because whatever. And thankfully I'm back in business. So glad to be here, man. How was your week? Yeah.
Holy shit, dude. This week was fucking amazing. First though, I noticed you're wearing something. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, man. So today, Kobe Bryant, RIP. So I'm from LA, Laker fan from day one. And, watched Kobe play for 20 years and it's kind of a fucking drag. And, there's lots of drags out there. So, I mean, it's sad, but like you can find there's a lot of sad stuff. So while at the same time I honor his memory and celebrate so much badassery of him, I took a second to go, hang on. There's also a lot of other things out there that are sad. So without like getting too far into it, I was like, yeah, this is important. And it's important to remember him for the great person that he was, the great champion that he was. But then to also like put it in perspective. Like,
you're asking people to have perspective though.
Right. I know.
You remember when Neil deGrasse Tyson tried to get people to have perspective?
Oh, yeah.
After one of the shootings.
Yeah. So anyway,
I know.
Like,
I do the same thing though. Like,
this is a bad thing. And you asked me because I know you're. Nicholas is like, oh, is that somebody's jersey you're wearing? And I hold up. He goes, hey, did you hear Kobe Bryant died? And I was like, so Nicholas doesn't know about Kobe Bryant. So I was telling him. I mean, you can look up. There's probably a top 10 Kobe Bryant moments, whatever. And if like you want to see alpha or like work, like dedication to fucking excellence and greatness and all that shit, it's in there. Somebody like him doesn't happen by accident. And I was telling him the thing that really stuck out, like burned itself, almost like horror movie style. Like, what am I watching right now? Was when Kobe Bryant ruptured his Achilles tendon. I think he was playing the Nuggets or something. And they were down by 2 in the fourth quarter. And Kobe knew it. He knew he'd ruptured it. It was something that ended his season. It almost ended his career. He was done for a year after that. Kobe just goes like, and he's so pissed off. He's so pissed off because he can't play basketball anymore that he just walks right out. He walks right out. And this is like on a foot that doesn't work with the ruptured Achilles. He walks right out to the free throw line.
God.
And he fucking drains 2 free throws to put them to tie the game. And I was with my friends, and we were just like, what's happening, man? What's going on? Like, how's he doing that? This is like, there's so much like effort and willpower and fucking to him that it's crazy. I mean, he's one other story I'll tell you. My friend told me this because he listened to a lot of sports radio. I didn't have all that time to listen to. And he said some new guy came into the Lakers, and he was like, all right, hey, Kobe, wow, man. He's like, yeah, man, let's do some practice stuff. Kobe's like, yeah, why don't you be at my house at 4? And the guy's, all right, cool, 4 in the afternoon? And Kobe's like, oh, man. 4 in the morning. Get to my house. That's when the day starts. That's when shit, dude, the guy was on fire. And it showed. So there's a reason he won the championships. Unfortunately, he took a lot of helicopter flights and et cetera. But so anyways, I have not worn this in a long time because sports have kind of had less meaning for me as my life got fuller. But, you know, he did a lot. He made a lot of people happy. And I suggest that you look up the top 10 greatest Kobe Bryant moments. Because, he started in the league when he was fucking 18, dude. I have underwear that's that old. Like, it's crazy. It's like what he did in his life. So, you know, I'm sure everybody else is going to be swinging off of him for a long time, but very inspiring on many levels as someone who can find inspiration on many levels. So Kobe Bryant.
One of the things I will say, being someone who doesn't follow sports much, is that I do appreciate how sports can bring out in a non-violent context the kind of warrior potential that people have to like push through for a purpose. I mean, that's what sports is. And that's the same thing that comes out in that warrior energy of hopefully protection. It can also be conquering, but where you see the absolute limits of what human beings are capable of, and people who will push so far beyond what other people will do, you can't even see the edges of normal people anymore.
Oh yeah, he definitely did that. And of course he was trying to chase Michael Jordan, which I don't know if anybody ever can, but maybe by dying first, Kobe hit the top of the whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, I think the sports does, you know, whether it co-opts or helps to soothe the tribal nature of things. Right. You know, I mean, too many people don't realize that like the LA Lakers aren't from LA. You know what I mean? They're like, it's not like everybody who plays on the New York Yankees is a New Yorker. Like they're from New York. Right. It's like, it's just a bunch of players going around. They're franchises, but still it gives us that tribalism thing. And I've stepped back from that as I realized there's a lot of other things I can do than watch other people get exercise. But I did spend a good 20 years watching Kobe get exercise, and it was fun. So yeah, go Kobe Bryant. Moving on.
Okay, that's not your anecdote, though, I'm assuming.
No, but I can tell you.
You want me to go first?
Is that how it works? I don't remember. You go ahead.
Anecdotes first. I'll go first. All so my week has been nuts. Like I said in an Instagram earlier this week that I think this might have been one of the best weeks of my entire life. There was some absolutely crazy stuff that happened early in the week that I will tell that story another time on a different podcast. But later in the week, on Wednesday, my parents came down to visit for, I think, the first time in about 5 years. This is actually my anecdote. It's not a therapy anecdote, but it's so significant for me that I was like, I thought of some other stuff that I did with clients, and I was like, nothing compares to this point. So if you're tuning in and you've been following for any amount of time, and if you follow for any amount of time, you're going to notice that we have a tendency to talk about a relatively short, finite list of really key points when it comes to success with this stuff and success in life in general. And one of the most important points that I'm going to harp on a lot, well, I think we've even done a podcast where this was already either the main theme or one of the main themes, is how important radical honesty has been in my life. I consider myself a recovering narcissist and a borderline pathological liar. There were times in my life where it was fucking everything, man. It was little tiny things and huge things. It was, hey, have you ever seen that movie? And I want you to like me. So yes, I have seen that movie. Oh my God, I love that movie, even though I fucking haven't. It was things like, hey, did you get that email that I sent 2 weeks ago that I totally did get, but I've just been super busy or procrastinating and I haven't gotten back to you? Oh no, that email got lost. I don't know, it got lost in ether. Sometimes that happens. Send it to me again. All the way up to huge fucking shit. Like many people have heard me talk about. I did a presentation a long time ago called How NLP Can Ruin Your Life. And in that one, I talked about how my time teaching NLP, I had a deep, dark secret that while I was getting all these crazy results for other people, NLP never worked for me. I couldn't get the results for myself. I couldn't make a swish pattern happen. I couldn't change my behaviors or my beliefs or anything. I couldn't hypnotize myself. Well, the thing that solved that, all of that, including getting NLP to work for myself, was I discovered this book called Radical Honesty. Now, some people live that way intuitively. Some people figure out that telling lies doesn't work and that it always has a cost. For me, I had to basically ruin my life to learn that lesson. So my life since then has been one of progressively getting better and better at being radically honest, of finding layers where I think I'm being totally honest. And then all of a sudden I find, oh, wait, whoops, I didn't know I wasn't even being honest with myself about these other things. And then I get a deeper layer of honest. It keeps happening. And finding new relationships to get honest with. So did you like my open loop there?
I was like, go on. Yes.
So my parents came down to visit, and for the last 4 days, I got up early in the morning, every morning, to go hang out with my dad, have coffee, and talk. And it was incredible. Like, I shared stuff with my dad that it wasn't even like I was hiding it. It was just stuff that we hadn't had a chance to talk about because we haven't really visited and hung out in a while. And when I was sharing things, so one of the rules in radical honesty is whatever you're the most scared to share, that's the most important thing to share. Whatever the thing is that you're the most afraid that if you share it, you will be rejected or you won't be acceptable or you won't be loved anymore. So I went for the jugular, man. We talked about everything. Like, I talked about fucking psychedelics. I talked about my relationship stuff. I talked about sex. I talked about, those are the big ones, honestly. And the crazy thing was sharing all this stuff with my dad. My dad's a super fucking cool dude, and he was chill with all of it. I don't know about the psychedelics. I'm still working on that one. We're going to see if I can get him to to join me on that particular journey. That's one of my dreams. But in particular, all the crazy...
I think tripping with my dad is one of my dreams.
It totally is for me. I totally want to do that.
It's not one of my dreams.
It is.
I mean, nightmares are still dreams, though, right? So technically, I think it is one of my dreams.
Yeah. So, so sharing with my dad, particularly about all the relationship stuff that's been going on in my life, and it's amazing. I'm super fucking proud of my relationships, and they're weird. They're not normal. My life is not normal in so many different ways. And my dad was like not just curious, but like not just okay with it, but he was curious, maybe even a little proud, I think. And then it opened up all these conversations about my childhood, where we started talking about my mom. My mom passed away in 2010, and it was like he was telling me stories that I'm like, what the fuck? That happened? And like it was like I felt like Bruce Willis at the end of The Sixth Sense. Like all of a sudden, like all the matrix is like revealing itself, because I'm seeing, like, I didn't know how how much I didn't know. And it was largely that my mom had done a really good job convincing me that she wasn't as crazy as she really was, basically, to speak ill of the dead. The conclusion that I drew from most of this was, my mom is not less crazy than my wife's mom. That my wife has been very clear that her mom has been a real problem in her life and has traumatized her in all these ways. But my mom had a particularly insidious way of convincing you that, no, I'm a super sweet, kind, loving person who's actually doing all this crazy shit behind the scenes. And listen, I have an enormous amount of compassion for my mom. Like, I have no resentment or judgment. That's not the point. It's an acknowledgement that, like, oh, I'm not bonkers here. Like, I did grow up in a really weird household where there was a lot of emotional abuse and emotional trauma. And it came from her childhood was awful. Fucking her mom, like, or her dad, like, physically abused her. Like, it was nuts. Like, I do not envy her childhood. My childhood was way better than that. So I have compassion for it. There's just something so healing about me being able to talk to my dad and him being able to share with me, and back and forth, and both of us going like, oh, I didn't realize that. And like, the rest of the day, we'd just be sitting there thinking about the conversations in the morning. So I'm hoping to share this story to inspire you, listener, to go and have some radical honesty conversations. Go have some conversations with people that scare you. Go clear the air with people and relationships that matter in your life, because there's nothing like it.
Yeah, man. I was waiting for someone else to be like, yeah. I agree. I wouldn't say I'm like, I mean, I'm not 100% honest, but when you said people who tend to be radically honest, I think we've talked about this early on. Is like, yeah, I can kind of be maybe too radical sometimes. Right. But that I figured out early, like, I don't have time. Like, I have a tiny family. Like, I got a mom and a dad. I don't even have cousins. And grandparents on one side that are gone. Well, they're all gone now, but I had them at the time that I realized this. Was like, I don't have time for not being honest for the most part. I mean, again, not always like super honest, right? Like, I'm sure I got that email too, when you sent it to me. I'm sure I've done that, right? But as far as like, it's easier to just go, to be front. And even with my dad, I remember we had some issues with it, with his uppity kid, hyper intelligent, smart ass kid, who I wonder where they got that from. And I remember, at the end of high school, it was like, I got kicked out of my dad's house into college, but then I got kicked out of college back into my dad's house. And then after that, I got kicked out of my dad's house again. And it was like a year later, I was modeling and had fallen into that, and somehow was making money and traveling the world, and reading all these books about psychedelics and NLP and all this philosophy and all this stuff in 95, early 95. And I remember going back to my dad and just being like, hey man, I forgive you for everything. I want you to forgive me too. Like, I really appreciate what you've done. I don't have the time or the energy to fucking hold on to any of this shit.
Yes.
Which felt really good for me. I don't really remember what he said, but it wasn't quite the unfurling of baggage that it might have been. But I do remember going, I don't have time for this shit. I have to be honest with you. And even just saying you're sorry to your dad for being a fucking dick. Yeah. Or being a smart ass and getting kicked out of places. I mean, I didn't commit any like crimes, but like, whatever. Like, to even own up to that is radical honesty in its own way. And then,
well, that's what you needed to say. That was the thing that was unsaid. Right. So, okay, if I'm going to be radically honest, this is the thing I need to say.
Also to say thank you to your fucking parents. Like, so I've also said my parents didn't beat me. They didn't hit me. They didn't do any crazy shit. They nurtured all my gifts. Like, that was we've talked, I think even when you were coaching me, you helped me to realize that like, my hero's journey was that I didn't think I had a hero's journey because I'm a fucking straight white male, Los Angeles. My parents loved me. I went to gifted schools and I was like, you know, that was my, I was like, who's going to want to listen to me kind of thing. But I realized pretty early that, hey, you guys spent so much money. You sent me to these schools. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I don't think enough kids do that. I'm not around too many of them, but I just, the sacrifices that parents must make, because I ain't a parent, because I ain't making those sacrifices, but the sacrifices that they do make are incredible. And I to me, the radical honesty was going, thank you. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for nurturing me. Thank you. Like, that's another big part of radical honesty with my parents. And other than that, telling everyone I love them when I can, you know, because you might fucking die tomorrow. You might die today.
You never know.
So fucking get into it. And that's the other thing to come back to is like, live your fucking life. Live it. Live your life now, because even Kobe Bryant didn't have a tomorrow, right? He had every single thing in the world and he has run out of tomorrows. So will you. So do your shit.
That's one of the reasons why I think radical honesty is so important. And like you said, like, I don't have time to not be honest.
Yeah.
It's
and be radically honest with yourself.
Time.
It's not about, hey, you're kind of a dick and you should brush your hair and your teeth are gross. And like, it starts here.
Yeah.
It starts there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I like the example of like me talking about what radical honesty meant to me, which was very different. Cause like the shit, like, I love you, I appreciate you, thank you, please forgive me. That stuff has been said many, many times. That stuff is all clear. I had a very different, radical honesty is about looking inside and looking at what's unsaid. And so I really appreciate you sharing like your radical honesty journey, because that gives people listening like, oh, I might not be being dishonest like Nicholas has. Oh, but I totally haven't done the thing that Morgan is. You know what I mean?
Right. So, or even like addictions or whatever, like they're your own little, like, where do you lie to yourself? How are you, you know, when you get honest with that, you know, when you start really digging down on those, they all fall apart because they're lies.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Your turn.
Well, so most of my week was spent in a fever, but before that, and I don't know, I'm trying to think if it was the last session or one before that. I don't know if I mentioned this at all. I have a client who we had a breakthrough session, and he's, you know, like many of my clients are, they're very, very analytical. I'm in my head and I have everything mapped out until it gets so far in that direction that a lot of other things are chaotic, shall we say, because so many things need to be like this. And we had helped him to have an integration of the parts, which, as we've said before, is sort of my like workhorse, is the parts together. And he had this amazing insight, and he was high off of his breakthrough. He's high at his breakthrough. And the next week I see him and I go, what's up, man? How you doing? And he's like, oh, well, you know, the integration is still there, but the high's worn off. And I'm like, okay, well, close your eyes and let's go back to that integration, that scene, that the place where your integration happened, that had so much metaphorical, symbological meaning for you. Let's go back there. And then with a couple little questions, oh, okay, I get it. I'm there. I feel it. I'm feeling it now. Okay, cool. And I bring him back and I'm like, so what happened? And his big insight was that he had turned his breakthrough moment into a memory. It became a still picture, like just a thing that happened. And I said to him, so what did you do? It's what you put with some energy, some attention, you broadened it, you brightened it, you made it a movie. You actually took it and put action and life into it with your consciousness and went, and boom, there it was again, right? And he's like, yeah. I go, so if you practice that, that's how it works, because all the shit you're sketched out about and panicked about and anxiety about and depressed about, those aren't pictures and memories, are they? Those are like lit up fucking spotlights,
Ooh, good point.
So it's the same thing. You just go, oh, what if we just flip it, turn all that stuff into memories, because you know how to do that, obviously. And you just taught yourself how to turn something that was a feeling back into a feeling again. Isn't that state control? And aren't you now choosing which states you want to have? And it was when I heard him say, I turned it into a memory. And I reminded him how to make that memory his present experience. And so much of what we do is to take the bad shit and focus on it. I mean, that's all it is. It's focused attention. Where energy flows, where attention goes, right? Mm-hmm. And attention goes where right. So that's all it is. And when you do that with something bad, wow, that sure is real. But that breakthrough, yeah, I remember that. Wish I could have that feeling again. Mm-hmm. Oh well, but the integrity is still there, which I was like, well, how cool is that? Even though you're dead, you're still one piece. So now watch what happens when you put a little energy into this. And so that was it. It was really just perfect proof of how you can take a state or a moment and blow it up and bring it to the now, and then use it to get what you want in the future. So that was it.
Well, the two things I liked about that, one is it just emphasizes the simplicity of submodality shifts, and like they're simple, but they can be fucking powerful when you're using them in the right place. Yeah. Like submodalities can be really lame too if you're using them in the wrong place. But man, when you're on the crux of an issue, sometimes you do an entire breakthrough session to dig down to the right place, and then the thing you do when you're there is simple fucking submodality shift. That's it. Right.
And it's not like I didn't go, is it black, white, or color? Is it moving?
Right.
It was so obvious that he had taken this thing, and I just said, go be in it. Go do there. You do now. Go do. Yeah. Which maybe was to say, make it a movie. You know what I mean? Go get kinesthetic. But yeah, you're right. It was all submodality. Totally. Like whatever was going on in his mind was to take the things. So what you said, there was two things you liked?
The other thing that I think that you mentioned was, I love doing this, is to, we sort of talked about it, I think last week when you were talking about like reverse engineering strategies, or you find something that someone does well in one area and transfer it to another area. Oh yeah. And what you mentioned this time was the idea that, so he has a thing that he liked, and he turned it into a memory, and now it doesn't have any energy anymore. But then you pointed out, but all the shit that bugs you, all the shit you're really depressed about and anxious about and worried about and that stuff, that's not a memory. That's very front and center, visceral, front and center. I'm already submodalitying. Right. So what if you flip those? What if you could take those and turn them into memories? And again, the beauty of like Morgan's languaging there is he didn't do a full submodality elicitation because he probably didn't have to. He already had enough rapport. The client is already responsive enough to his language that he could just say, you can use the word memory. So I turned it into a memory. Well, that's a strategy. His unconscious mind knows how to do that. So you could sit there and be like, what does that mean to turn it into a memory? Or you could just be like, what if you took these other things and made them into memories?
Yeah, do that thing. You know that thing? Do that with this.
Yeah. That thing that you do, like, I don't need to know.
Well, that goes to parts integrations, and like the part that you think you need to get rid of, you actually need what it's doing to do that. You just need to,
there's a valuable skill on the flip side of it.
Right. And that's why I swear to God, so many times when I'm first meeting somebody online or whatever, a client, and they're telling me about this stuff or this part, and it's like, oh, that part of you that's like, that's really critical, right? Well, I don't want to get rid of that part. In fact, I want to give that part a promotion. And they're like,
yes.
And I want to talk to, I just want that. I say, I want that part to know that I'm on its side and I'm going to help it.
Oh,
and I've all of a sudden they're like, huh? And then like, it's all that resistance just kind of goes, And then I go, is it okay if I give that part a promotion? And they're like, what? I go, yeah, you know, I'm like, instead of working really hard, what if I could do the same job? What if you could get paid more by doing less work and have like a corner office? And they're like, yeah, but I hate it. I tell it it's a piece of shit all the time because it's telling me I'm a piece of shit all the time. I'm like, no, what if, what if you could just do something all the time and use that part to do it with? So anyways,
we gotta cut that section out of this. That was fucking brilliant. So I do that same thing where like, I want you to know I'm on your side. I want you to know I always say there's no part of me that wants to make you go away. I want to help you get what you want to get out of this. And I'm talking to the part.
Right. Yeah. I'm always like, I would never get rid of that part. I would never do anything to get rid of that part. And they're like, huh? I'm not even talking to you right now.
There's smoke coming out of their ears.
Exactly. But at that point, the resistance is gone. And they're like, oh, okay. I thought.
Yeah.
Go on.
Dude, that technique of just like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
And then like probably my favorite, let's just skip the trance inductions is what's the name of that part? Bob. Right. Okay. Hi, Bob. How you doing? Right. Thanks for coming and talking to me. And you just talk to that part as congruently as if it was really there.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll be like,
they will drop right into it.
I'll tell them, where do you like to eat? What's your favorite place? Oh, Hawaii. Great. You go to Hawaii now. I'm going to talk to Bob.
Yeah.
Right. Like just off you go. I'm talking to Bob. And then it was like, okay. And then I asked, so Bob, what's your deal? Well, his thing. No. Bob, Hawaii. Off you go. I'm talking to Bob.
I would, his, yeah, I'm not talking to you.
Nope.
Bob. I'm talking to Bob.
Yes. That's
that's a great way to just skip the trance induction.
Yeah. Okay, so then
quotes.
We have
My turn.
Anecdoted ourselves, and I took an anecdote.
Okay, so my quote. I'm going to fully own that this feels like a slight cop out because I only just started rereading this book and I only read like one chapter, and this is literally the quote on the inside of the cover. But it's a really good quote and it's a really good book. So I have my girlfriend reading Monsters and Magical Sticks by Stephen Heller. So if you're watching this, listening to this, and you are a student of NLP and hypnosis, if you have not read Monsters and Magical Sticks,
read it.
Get it and read it. This is hands down easily one of the best books, probably top 3.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
This is probably the only book that shows up on the top 3 lists of hypnosis and NLP for me. It's fabulous. So the quote on the inside of that book, it is my belief that all presenting problems and symptoms are really metaphors that contain a story about what the problem really is. It is, therefore, the responsibility of the therapist to create metaphors that contain a story that contains the possible solutions. The metaphor is the message. Hypnosis is, in and of itself, a metaphor within a metaphor.
Totes.
So my comment on this was largely that first part. My belief that all presenting problems and symptoms are really metaphors that contain a story about what the problem really is. That first part of the sentence.
Yeah, man.
That's not just applicable to your clients. This is a way of approaching life where you start to pretend that everything means something. Like fucking Close Encounters with the mashed potatoes, right? Where he's there and he's like sculpting the mashed potatoes into something and like with true desperation in his voice and his eyes looks at his wife and says, this means something. This is important. I can't do it with a straight face.
Yes.
The idea is that when you start to act like everything has meaning in your life, especially problems, I do this when I work with couples all the time. This is one of the places where I think it's so valuable, is everything your partner does is a metaphor. It's a reflection of what's going on in you.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I often say, yeah, when your partner when your partner complains to you, the way I like to describe, I say your partner's complaints and criticisms are a treasure chest wrapped in razor wire and shit. And your job is to delicately and carefully unwrap the razor wire and clean off the shit to find the treasure inside. But when you only see the shit and razor wire, your partner's throwing big balls of shit and razor wire at you, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? But when you shift your orientation toward this complaint or criticism and you go, wait a minute, no, there's a treasure in here, and it's my fucking job to find it. That will, it's one of these things where it becomes true because you shifted your orientation to assume that it's true. Mm-hmm. And I'm using an external example with a relationship, but this is true about any problem in your life. I had fucking cancer a few years ago, and I applied this same principle to that. I was like, all right, this is the universe throwing me a giant razor wire and shit pile, and it's my job to unwrap that, clean off the shit, and figure out what the treasure is. If you haven't found, if the thing is still a tragedy, you haven't gotten creative enough to find the treasure inside.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think perception is projection, etc. Like if, you said problems or metaphors that contain a story of what the problem really is. If someone bugs you in some way, well, that's a metaphor for what the problem is, right? Like whatever problem you have with someone is your problem, and it's because of the way you are shaping the story around that gives it meaning. And yeah, so much of it's metaphor. Even the same guy I just talked about, I've been working a lot with generative language questioning, not unlike love is like and if someone says fluffy bunny skipping through the fields, and you're okay, and there's like battlefield, and you okay, well, that says a lot about you and what you think love is. And the same guy, when it was like he wants to be performing a certain role at work, and I'm like, have you ever done that? And he's like, yeah. And I go, well, when you're performing that role at work, you're like a what? And he goes, what? I go, you're like a what? He goes, what do you mean? I go, just put your brain away and tell me you're like a what? And he goes, it took him a long time. And he's like, trying to find the right answer that makes sense and makes me happy and proud. I'm like, when you're there doing the thing, you're like what? And he finally said something like, I'm a captain of my ship or something like that. And I go, right? And he just went, oh, and just something simple of going from cerebral, everything, which is its own metaphor, to a captain of a ship. He later wrote me and says, oh my God, man, I'm the captain. I'm talking to the captain. I'm on the ship. I'm having the things. I'm like, he's part of the ship and the crew, and I'm doing the things, and I'm being the captain. And I'm like, it's that simple of just a simple metaphor shift. And I think we've talked many a time about everything is a metaphor. And, the unconscious mind is a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor for everything else. And you can view it that way. And that was one of my bigger psychedelic realizations, other than I am you, you are me, and then I am everything is everything, was that everything is a metaphor for everything else. And when you look at it that way, you can like, I know you like to watch movies like that as well. You can find meaning in anything. I'm starting a whole
nother podcast about that.
Nice. But you can find meaning in anything, and the better the meaning, the better.
So do the language pattern again, your generative language pattern. You are like, was it
No, that's, I guess that'd be more of a simile, right?
Right.
You're looking for symbolic language. So when you were having your week with your talk with your dad, right? Mm-hmm. That was like when you were there, being in that moment there, having that realization, you were like what?
Well, so I was wondering if you're using the word like. So what was I? Like?
You are like a what? You were what?
Yeah. You are like. So what was I like?
that conversation itself was like,
the words that coming to mind is like free, easy, clearing.
Right. Good. So free, easy, clearing,
brave,
comfortable,
yeah,
brave. What kind of brave is brave like that?
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. So in my mind, the image that just popped into my head is like a young tribal warrior, dark hair, tattoos. He's got a spear and he's standing in front of a dark cave opening.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's climbed up a large mountain to get to that spot. And he's just standing there and the wind's blowing in his hair and he's standing at the cave about to go in.
Nice. And when the brave is there at the cave, standing and hair blowing, that brave is like what? And it just, you keep following that down the line, right? But even that brave, brave cave, right? How powerful is that for you? Because that might not make sense for other people, because but that's your brave, your cave,
yeah,
right? So it's just a matter of going,
my Rave brave cave.
Yeah. Oh God, that's right. It's Rave's brave cave. Hey, welcome to Rave's brave cave. What can I get you? Okay. So,
no, that was really cool because you actually walked me through it. Like, and like I was aware of my own brain going, all right. And so at some point I had to just like verbally barf and just be like, words, here's the words.
Right.
And then what you going like, okay, good. Yeah. All of that is like what? It was a great modeling of how to do that process. So nice. That was cool. That was very meta.
All right, cool, man. Glad I could introduce you to Rave's Brave Cave. So there's so many. This will be my last quote from this book, which I do hope you read. Jed McKenna's Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing.
Oh, yeah, man. I got it. It's on my list.
I just kind of poked into a thing here. There's like, this. There's so many things. I mean, so I know how you feel about following your bliss, and I agree in terms of pleasure. And at the same time, this is the main character in this book saying that enlightenment isn't a peak experience. It's not an altered state of consciousness. It's not a happily ever after fairy tale. Spiritual enlightenment means waking up as simple and as difficult as that. Bliss is just the heaven myth repackaged for a slightly hipper crowd. In that he's saying, because like Robert Anton Wilson spoke of the bliss ninnies, and I know you don't mean that when you're saying,
I know.
Your bliss.
I can clarify it later.
Okay, but so many people are. But I just really like that it's like enlightenment's not a peak experience. It just means waking up, as simple and as difficult as that. Bliss is just the heaven myth repackaged for a slightly hipper crowd. And I just think that it's beautiful in that it's not a thing that happened to you once and then goes away. It's something that you are. It's like the classic, when you're not enlightened, what is it? When you're not enlightened, you milk the goats and go to sleep, and then when you are
carry water, chop wood. After enlightened, carry water, chop wood. Yeah.
That's like, what is enlightenment? Sleep when you're hungry, and sleep when you're tired, eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty. Like it's not a peak experience. That it's an overall state, and to differentiate that between the sort of, just the bliss ninnies, and to say that it's actually a real thing, and it's not always going to be happily awesome. And they're like, because what if I was enlightened once, dude? I mean, I've been enlightened many times, right? And they've come feels away, but like to really accept that there's a possibility that enlightenment is just a way of being. It's a way of waking up and doing what needs to be done during the day, and to find pleasure in that, for sure, because both of us are very much centered on our various forms of pleasure. but to not get lost in chasing a high or wishing that, oh man, that one time at Burning Man, I was so enlightened that I'll never be that enlightened again. That's sort of missing the point. And that's a lot of what this book's about, is it's just like finding it in the now and bringing it there.
Well, as NLP, as NL people, we understand that words don't mean anything other than the meaning that we give it. And to me, when I talk about bliss, this is exactly the distinction that I make, is that your bliss is often not in the direction of the thing that would be the most easy or the thing that would feel the most pleasurable. It is often into the dark, terrifying fucking cave. And really, I think
Rave's Rave Cave?
The Rave Cave. Often I think the real bliss shows up in like consistency and discipline, like you practicing juggling. That's your bliss. But dude, there's got to be times when you're like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this right now. And like, nah. But you don't get fucking better at something. You don't, if you only exercise when you want to, you will not grow out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone will say, oh, no, this is enough. I don't want it. If you want to get further out of that, you are going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. So for me, that's not what bliss means. Bliss doesn't mean doing what you want to do. Bliss means do that thing that calls you in this direction. But your point around this is people don't understand that. People will say bliss and they think it means, yeah, but that doesn't make me, that doesn't light my joy. So I don't know if I want to do that.
Yes. So I mean, I hope that we can help someone find a distinction between those two things and to find their own definition for that. But just as, you know, I just like the way you put that it's not, it's doing what needs to be done.
Yes. Yeah. To me, I guess the highest level distinction that I make about bliss is that do what needs to be done. You could say for what purpose?
Right.
But ultimately for me, the point of bliss is that there is a feeling that I have inside that tells me what direction to go. And at some level, if you ask me for what purpose, the answer is, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
But it's
because that bliss tells me to go in that direction.
Yeah, because it feels good. The right kind of good.
Yeah, but it's not like that immediate gratification, like get me high kind of good. It's like,
because following your bliss is, you know, needle in the arm, wanking on my couch till you know, right. Yeah, that's not it.
That's very blissful, but that's not the kind of bliss we're fucking talking about. That's not the kind of bliss I don't even think Campbell was
the
talking
heaven myth, right? That he's talking about in here. That sounds like hell. Like to me, heaven. Like biblical heaven, like sounds like hell. Like it's church forever. Yeah. Like what? Like no death. Yeah. No growth. What do you do in heaven? Like what do you do in heaven forever?
Yeah.
If there's no growth, there's no death. There's no
bask in the glory of God.
Right. Dude. But how long can you do that? I know, but I'm just saying, like, is that bliss? Because
all the cool people are in hell. That's why you want to go to hell.
I know. Yeah. Yes.
Best party in the universe.
So thank you for allowing me to follow my bliss with that with this book and sharing.
Right. So you brought questions this week, eh?
Oh, that's right.
I don't even know what you brought. So
yeah, let's see.
Hit me.
Find them on the old desktop here.
So last week I asked, and then you got to answer first, right? So you're going to ask, and I'll answer first.
Sure. So these came off a certain Facebook group. Oh gosh, sorry, I gotta find these. I have it here, but when I collapsed my screens, hang on, I gotta find it on my Finder. Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing good.
Do you remember the name of the Facebook group so we can give credit?
Yes, but I'm not going to. For I don't know if there are obvious reasons or not, but it's
okay.
Where are the questions for living in NLP? There it is. So maybe this will give you an idea. I was going to ask this question. So Nicholas, here's a question that I found on this forum. Is anyone going to Huna in March? What do you think? Is that your?
I think some people will.
Okay, cool. So that's your answer. Good. So that was the one. That was the answer. That was the question that was on there.
I'm probably not.
Okay. So
I do think about it sometimes, though.
Yeah, tell you what.
Like,
So here's based on what we just said. Here's a question that someone had.
You're not going to let me answer that.
I'm just trying to avoid the trouble that might be caused. But go ahead.
Whatever. We already stirred. We already threw rocks at the hornet's nest. So
whatever. Okay. So the question that was there that I saw, and there were lots of good questions. Does anyone have a way or suggestion to help a person access joy when they can't seem to access it on their own? Seems right up our said alley. I'm sure. I don't know if that's
joy when they can't seem to access it on their own.
Right. I mean, again, I think these questions are coming from, fairly new people.
Beginners. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's review some basic NLP stuff. So the best way, typically, the first place you go to is revivification. So that means, when have you felt joy in the past? Think of a time, think of a specific time, take them back to that time. Have them model what was going on. You can take them through a kind of trance induction or light trance. You can just have them see what they saw, hear what they heard, feel what they felt. If that doesn't work, you can have them walk through how they would stand or breathe or move their face if they were feeling joy. So that's sort of like building it from the ground up. Yep. Ultimately, for me, typically what I do is get into enough rapport and then do it.
Yeah, give them joy and go.
Yeah, do joy
have
yourself.
A smidge. Have a smidge. Yeah, and have a smidge. And there's a little
and
more.
The humor, by the way, is a powerful tool when it comes to this. Remember, too, that a lot of people think that in order to use humor, you need to be witty or funny or whatever. You don't. Some of the best comedians are able to elicit a laugh from people by just making a face or making a sound.
Yeah.
Or like repeating a word where you're like, right. So all you have to do is, you're in rapport and then go there yourself, draw it out of them. If they're in rapport with you, they'll go there too. Those are 3 options. What are your thoughts?
That's pretty much it.
Did I cover all of them? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, anything else? Let's see here. Any advice on how to deal with driving anxiety?
You want to answer this one?
Yeah, exactly. Well, driving, I've done a lot of driving anxiety stuff with people, and a lot of it has to do with trust. I mean, what's anxiety? It goes with what we were talking about before. Anxiety is taking your energy brain and making giant moving pictures of all the shit that's going to happen bad.
Yeah.
That's when, I'm panic driving. I'm looking at all the things. Like if you're driving around looking at all the people you don't want to kill and all the cars you don't want to smash, and then you're thinking in the negative, and you're taking your catastrophizing brain and going like, oh yeah, look at all the ways everything can go wrong. You never leave your house, especially because a lot of things actually genuinely can go wrong, even when you're at your best. So you got to like really be on it. And if you're overthinking all that stuff, you can, if you're not trusting your unconscious mind, because really to me, driving is so unconscious. It took me a long time to realize that, even after learning so much from you guys about hypnosis and all that, is like, it's totally unconscious. And trusting yourself to drive means trusting your unconscious mind to do the things that it does. And overthinking things is a problem. So if you establish trust, you think about what you want to be doing and then do it as best you can. And then if you're just learning how to drive, it takes a while to do that. And then you learn to do that and you trust yourself to do that. And someone else I was talking to, I said, when you're having sex, if you're thinking about it, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. And the same goes for driving. If you're thinking about it when you're doing it wrong, right? You should be able to kind of trust yourself to navigate, because it's such a metaphor, to navigate yourself. And then, you know, to get from A to B, to go out into the world and express myself through motion and all this stuff. To actually trust yourself, to know why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going where you're going, who you are, and to really trust yourself. And then so I would help them establish trust with their unconscious mind that was running the thing, to help them to see that, yeah, you're right. And same thing, I would never get rid of the part of you that's freaking out about all the shit that's going wrong, that could go wrong. I want that part to do its job better, get a promotion, do more with less, and be able to be up on and doing its job. But right now it's doing too much. So it's mostly a lot of the same pattern again. And whether that, I'm sure you can talk about a lot of ways that we do that. But it's a matter of us getting that part back on board, back in line, toning it down, and then getting it to do its job. Because I would never get rid of that part. Does that answer my question?
Does that answer my question?
Yeah. What about you? Do you ever work with any driving stuff?
Everything that you just said, and then like if you just start with that, like as a default, like you're probably gonna get like fucking 75% of people with just the rapid fire bullet points of everything Morgan just covered. And then I would say if there's the remaining 20-25% that you might not get with that, well, then you're going to get, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, then you're going to need to dig into it and figure out exactly what's going on. So when you say you have driving anxiety, what the fuck do you mean? Like, are you painting pictures of bad things happening? Because you said things about it's an unconscious process, you need to trust yourself. Well, if the person is having driving anxiety, I've literally talked to people where their anxiety is that they are like, no, I do not trust myself that when I'm driving over a bridge, my unconscious isn't going to jerk me off the road and like off the edge of the bridge.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, your unconscious is not going to jerk you off the road. You couldn't help yourself.
You're the one blushing.
Yeah, well, I have color shifts like Bob the Tomato.
Yes.
So beyond that, I mean, you dig into where did it come from? Like, what's the trauma?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, and then there's the old scramble to whatever might have come from.
So the rapid fire metaphor list that he gave there of shifts and reframes, I really do think that covers so much of the common reasons. Sometimes when you're working with problems and you've done it a lot, you do tend to develop a standard procedure of like, well, here's how I do it. And then you can do that. And from an efficiency perspective, sometimes that's the best way to do it is you're like, I know that a huge percentage of people, this is going to get it. And then if it doesn't, well, great. Then you roll your sleeves up and go, okay, well, then what else do we need to do? And then you end up doing root cause elicitation, parts work, trance, figure out where the trauma is, scramble the strategy, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
One more? Sure. What would be the best technique for someone that doesn't have a drive to exercise?
Interesting. I taught an entire class on this, but I honestly would rather hear you go first on this because you are, between the two of us, clearly the expert when it comes to exercising. I did teach a class called Love Exercise is the name of the class. And it was a class designed to install the strategies to get you to love exercise. But I want to hear what you would answer this first.
Well, the best technique for someone that doesn't have a drive to exercise. Well, I would get into why they would want to exercise, essentially. Hey, come on.
Is your cat pressing your keys?
He's like, it's time. I'm ready for you to be done talking. So, give me a second.
Oh, this is so professional.
Yes, whatever. People love cats. So why would you want to exercise ultimately? What is your goal in doing that? What would that do for you? And it's not because my wife thinks I'm fat or because I'll die or any of that stuff. It's more of like, what do you want to do? Why would you want to do that? To really get into the goals of that. And so many people are like, the word exercise itself is a fucking major trigger. So many people, the gym, what is exercise is such a major trigger. I had the gym and I went in there and I smelled it and I felt shame, and now I smell gyms and I feel shame. Like whatever that is, all those triggers, what are they? What are their biggest ones? Like, oh, I hate exercise. Do you like movement? Yes. Okay. Well, then let's get some movement.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate gyms. Cool. You can move in other places, right? Oh, okay. So to sort of pull them down off the extreme edge of exercise means gym, means hatred, means smelly jocks, and all the emotional blockages around that stuff. Because if you have, a lot of weight to lose or a lot of something to build or whatever it is, it's going to take time, and it needs to be something that feels right and isn't torment. And I go and intentionally experience torment all the time because I enjoy it. That for me, but it's fun for me. But for most people, like, why are you doing that? It's terrible. What are you doing to yourself? I enjoy that. But for some people, it just needs to be baby steps, winnable steps, and to really, like the technique, I would say, is stay control. You know what I mean? Whether that's through a swish or I call it submodalities. Gym is a big, smelly, whatever. Like to figure out what those things are and to find the worst and the nastiest of them and to sort of undo those triggers and actually plant some new ones of like, what's it going to be like when you're at your daughter's 40th birthday? What's it going to be like when you look down and you can see your toes? What's it going to be like when, that kind of stuff, when you look back on the last year?
Why do you exercise?
It feels good. I like the way I look when I see myself. I'm healthy, which, I have energy. It's who I am. It's who I've been. But for me, it's meditation through movement. Like when I go for a run, it's just like brain off, left, right, whatever. Yeah. That it's something that honors my body too, because so much of what it makes me feel grateful to have one and use it. And there are times, care of it. Yeah, when if I run by somebody in a wheelchair or something like that, like in my own little way, I think to myself, I'm doing this for them. I'll push myself harder, like in honor of them in a way, but for those who can't, to do, you know what I mean? To use what I have, because there's people who can't. And it makes me appreciate what I have even more, but not as a like, obviously kind of a way, but just as there are people who can't do this, and to cherish it through movement and honor it through health and nutrition, and to give it what it wants as best as I can do it. I'm not like alpha, whatever, but to really honor my vessel by giving it what it thrives on, and to be able to look in the mirror and go, I'd fuck me.
I really dig that reframe, that window you gave into your perspective on when I see somebody who can't do what I can do, it makes you push yourself harder. That's a cool little twisty belief. I like that. So like I said, I built an entire class that was an entire day on this subject. There's no way I can cover all my thoughts on this one. So I'm just going to point out one thing that Morgan said that I think I find a lot of people have a real hard time with, a lot of people who haven't exercised before. And that was the thing about, you said you like the way you look in the mirror. And you're like, I see so many people that are like, okay, I love my body.
My Silence of the Lambs reference. Sorry.
I did see it. Okay, it fucked me so hard.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I heard it. I was just in like a complimentary
You're too busy
space.
having a good time and being professional. I appreciate that.
Okay, so here's the thing. I hear people talk about all the time, like you need to honor your temple. You need to take care of your body. Exercise is love. You need to give your body what it needs because that's the fuel that it runs on, because your brain's going to work better. You're going to be more creative. You're going to feel better. You're going to live longer. But I do not hear people emphasize, because it's kind of like everybody assumes that this is part of it, but it's not polite to talk about, that one of the most powerful motivation sources for people who are actually in really good shape is pride. The word pride gets a bad rap. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. But the word pride, the way most people think of it as a bad thing, that's not even the word pride. It's arrogance. That's what people think of. It's like, oh, that's a very prideful person. They mean arrogant. They mean like a cocky bastard. That's not what pride is. Pride is very simply, you did good, now you get to feel good. That's how it works. So when you are proud of the work that you did, like this is one of the reasons why one of my clients is, her name's Coralie. Shout out Coralie. She's 73, I want to say. And she, a couple years back, took on the identity of a bodybuilder because she got this idea that we're all building our body, whether or not you're a jacked, gigantic, whatever, we're all building our body in some capacity. And if you go and you build something like a sculpture or a model or a Lego set, and you look at it and you're like, yeah, motherfucker, I built that. That's pride, and that's okay. That's a good thing. That's the primary fuel source that we should be using to motivate everything that we do. And when the thing that you built is yourself, of course you should feel pride about that. If you aren't able to feel pride about the work that you're doing, fuck it. You are not gonna get there.
What's the point?
Yeah, you're not gonna get there. So for me, what you said about like, yeah, and also I like the way I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, fuck me. That's an important part too.
I don't do the talk.
You had to.
But I do have the lotion in the basket. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, I think we're done. On that note, let's end. And folks, if you want to see a color shift, look here. Like this is a demonstration of a color shift.
Yes. All right, man. Well, thank you.
Okay, I think we did good. So next week we won't be back on Friday, right?
Yeah, no, unless we can maybe do it Thursday while I'm at the airport. I will be not here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So.
Oh, well, either we'll do Thursday or we'll do Monday when you get back.
Okay.
Okay. All right, folks.
Cool.
Peace,
yeah. Thanks,
love,
everybody.
and NLP.
Take care.
Later. Shout out Kobe.